going to go ahead and get started this evening. We are here for the third and final workshop with Rocky Mountain School of Photography. Thank you all for coming. Tonight you will be learning from Quinn Hegwood.
Hi guys, all four of you. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name's Quinn. I am a retail professional portrait photographer here in Missoula, and I also teach at the professional and summer programs at Rocky Mountain School of Photography. So I teach the portraiture and posing classes. I also teach their printing classes and some of their creative courses as well. So a few hats in the program, but portraiture is my main way of making money and what brings me joy. So those two things put together, it's a pretty good gig. So for the next hour-ish, we're just going to chat about how to take some better portraits than what you're already taking, if you've taken any before at all. Okay. So we're going to chat about a little bit about exposure and elements of exposure for a portrait, a little bit about posing and lighting, and then just interacting with the person in front of your camera, how to make them feel comfortable, get some authentic expressions rather than those cheesy, terrible smiles that we all get from most of you. Are all nodding like, yeah, those are really bad. Okay, so that's what we're going to chat about. Please don't hesitate to ask questions because that's the best way to keep this class flowing too. And if there's anything that you guys want me to repeat or touch on again, don't hesitate to ask, okay? Because it's way worse teaching to crickets than it is a chatty class, okay? You guys also, if you didn't grab one when you walked in, grab one when you leave. There's this little packet that basically says a lot of what I'm gonna say in words and bullet points, and phrases some things in different ways in this little booklet. So take that with you. You guys are more than welcome to take notes, but this is also a really great reminder of what we talked about tonight. Cool? Okay, so let's start. So what's scary about portraiture? Why is that like the thing that so many people starting in photography are afraid to start taking pictures of other people?
Someone inflicts it.
Yeah, a little bit personal, right? You're definitely, almost feel like you're inconveniencing someone a little bit because like what if it doesn't turn out, right? Okay, there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to get a good picture. Okay, and what if it doesn't? Then you just kind of like don't show them and like say thank you and then hope that they don't ask to see it and just like forget that the whole interaction ever took place. Okay, so there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to create a good picture, and also you suddenly have to be like extroverted and interact with somebody that maybe you don't know and pull that personality out of you that maybe doesn't come very easily. You also have to remember your exposure. You have to remember that maybe I have to pose this person. You have to suddenly be aware of your light and your background, and there's a lot that floods into your head all at the same time, and then it's also a person relying on you for a picture. It's not like a landscape that's probably not going to go anywhere in the next 10 minutes and you can figure it out and you can take a few pictures and it'll probably work. One of them might work out, okay? People are different because there's a living, breathing, thinking, judging person in front of you, okay? And that's scary, okay? But let's just talk about what makes a good portrait first so that we can kind of pick apart what's important for portraiture and what you can kind of leave out of your brain, okay? So when we look at those photos, like portraits that people have taken where you're like, okay, that's fine, and then the ones that you see that are like, oh my God, that's really good, or that person looks so beautiful, that light is stunning. What makes it so good, okay? So good exposure, obviously. That's true for literally any picture. If the exposure is not good, the photo needs a lot of editing help or it just didn't work, right? Okay. The way that it's composed either makes a person look good or makes a person look like not quite their best, okay? The way that it's lit, same thing. Lighting could either make a person look really good or make them look not quite their best. It could add shadows in weird places. It can make brightness in weird places. It can change skin tones. It can do a lot of funky things. Okay, your background or lack of, okay? Most of the time, the background is distracting, that takes away from the portrait, right? We want the portrait to be about the person and the background to just kind of fall away, right? We don't want to be worried about the parked car or the stop sign or all the tree branches or the traffic lights in the background. Okay, and I'm gonna like go into detail on all of this even more. This is just a little like preview. Okay, the perspective or the point of view that you shot at. Okay, were you at eye level of the person? Did you shoot low? Did you shoot high? Okay, how did you angle yourself so that the person looks as good as they possibly can? Okay, or did you angle yourself not very well and the person doesn't look as good as they possibly can? Okay, we shoot everything from eye level almost all the time. It's just like how we see the world, so it's natural for us to just pick up our camera and shoot that way. And that's not always the most creative and it's not always the most flattering. Okay, anything else that you guys can think of that I didn't say in this, of what you've seen makes a portrait stand out? Does that kind of cover all the buckets? Yes. Also the outfit, yeah, totally. Or the hair, jewelry, whatever, makeup, all of that stuff, yeah.
Where does facial expression fit into these?
In another category, yeah. Yeah, the pose,
Have a big timer if they're looking,
absolutely, yeah.
and sometimes depending on what they want, would make a difference.
Yeah, if they're wanting a more serious or a more like candid portrait, whatever they're wanting, absolutely. Yeah, so the pose and the body language and also the facial expression, that's huge, right? Because if a person's uncomfortable in front of the camera, you can tell, like from the picture. You can totally tell. You see it like in senior portraits almost every single time. Like every senior graduate from high school, the announcement that I've gotten, I'm like, God. Like, see, that's why I don't photograph seniors. I don't, because they're impossible. And I don't have it in me to pull out the fake smiles. I don't. Okay, it's really, really tough. But you can tell they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be there and they don't want to have their picture taken. And that affects the portrait. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about exposure first. So you guys, I'm assuming, know what these three things are. I hope so, because otherwise this is going to be a different hour. Okay, but shutter speed, ISO, and aperture are our big three, right? That's our triangle of exposure. Those are the things that we have control over. Okay, so one great thing about portraiture is the way that we can use exposure is really easy, actually, if we're in natural light. Okay, in like plenty of natural light, like a situation like this even. Okay, so we have those three that we're working with. And I'm going to assume for this whole class that you guys are working with natural light. I'm not going to bring like flash or strobes or anything like that into it. We're just going to assume that we're working with windows or the sun, okay? Okay, so out of those three, there's one that is the most important for portraiture, for getting a really nice, flattering portrait, okay? And what that is the depth of field, which is controlled by the aperture, okay? The reason that I say the depth of field is the most important thing to pay attention to, okay, so the aperture is the most important feature to control when it comes to taking a good portrait, is because it controls how blurry the background is, right? Okay, and how wide open that lens is, so how much light is coming through, okay? So if we have a really nice blurry background that's really soft and there's lots of soft light on the person's face, that is way more flattering than if the image is completely sharp all the way through and we can see detail in the trees behind the person and also detail in their face, right? Okay, most of the time, unless we're taking like a documentary or environmental portrait where the environment is important, okay? But either way, we're controlling the aperture to get those things, okay? I just said why. I always do this. I always get like one step ahead of my bullet points, okay? So let's talk about what controls the depth of field. When I just automatically assumed you guys were all here for the exposure one. Were you all 4 here for the first exposure class? / know a little bit about exposure? Okay. So things that control our depth of field, okay, are the length of our lens, right? So different focal lengths have different aperture capabilities, okay? You guys can see that on like the numbers, the little details on your lens, that it goes to f1.4 or f4.5 or whatever it is, okay? So that is obviously one factor, okay? If you guys are wanting to shoot at one really low, nice, soft aperture, then it would be a good idea to invest in a lens that goes to like f2 something, okay? The more expensive lenses go to the lower apertures. So keep that in mind. That's also why for the first like 6 years of my career, I only owned one lens because I spent my savings on it and then I just kind of dealt. And it's a beautiful lens, and I honestly, it's never failed me. Okay, so I'm okay with that. But know that if you're like, I need to be able to shoot at f2.0, you're gonna probably need to save up some money or drop some cash on a lens that can do that, okay? But don't feel like just because your lens maybe only goes to f4.5, that you can't take portraits. 4.5 is a low aperture as well, and it will still get soft backgrounds. They won't be as warm and fuzzy and glowy as like f2 or something low like that, okay? But it's still capable. You can still practice and you can still create really great work with a lens like that, okay? So don't think that because you don't have the gear, you can't create something, okay? But that is a factor, okay? Obviously, the aperture itself affects the depth of field. So low aperture, like I said, anywhere between like, I mean, you could go as low as f1.4, which I'll talk about why you shouldn't go that low in a little bit, but that's as low as you could go. There's, I think, one lens exists that goes to like f1, and I think it's a macro lens. That would be the only purpose for something like that, okay? A higher aperture like f11, 16, somewhere up there, is gonna get the background sharp all the way through the image, right? You guys know this, okay. So obviously a DOF factor, okay? Your distance from the subject affects the depth of field as well, okay? So if my subject is that table right there with the pens on it, and I'm here shooting like a 50 millimeter, so seeing like a person sees, okay? And I have a really low aperture, I'm kind of hoping to get a really blurry background. I'm probably not going to be successful, okay? Because my lens can only tell distance to like a certain distance, okay? It can only see the difference in like layers to a certain point. So if it sees that table, it can't quite tell the difference between the distance from me to that table and the distance to me to that building behind us, okay? So all of it's gonna be sharp no matter what my aperture is. If I step way closer, okay, so now I'm from me to my desk to my subject, then my lens says, oh, look, a subject, a focal point, and other stuff. And it can blur that background and focus on my subject, okay? So if you're like, my lens is just focusing and making everything sharp, maybe you need to step a little bit closer to your person, okay? Also, photographing a person from that far away is really weird, right? Like how I'm not gonna communicate with somebody 20 feet away from me, okay? Also your subject's distance from the background, okay? So even if I'm close enough to my subject for my lens to tell difference in layers, okay? But my subject is leaning right up against a tree or a wall, okay? still too close. There aren't enough layers, right? So my lens says, oh, look, a subject, and still more subject. It's too close, okay? So the wall is going to be sharp, so is the person. If they take a big step off of that wall, then the lens again can say, oh, focal point, other stuff, and can separate those things, okay? So again, if you're like, I wanted a blurry background, but the trees are perfectly sharp, they're probably too close to them, and they need to take a step off of that, okay? Like, you always see the senior photos of the person like leaned against the tree like this, and everything is sharp off of those things, okay? So, for example, if you guys can see this okay, right? So, this is a pretty low aperture, and because you can tell that we can see the background, but it's not super blurry, but it's not super sharp. We're kind of in the middle, right? Light is kind of nice on her, but this overall as a portrait is kind of like meh, you know, it's fine, not that great, okay? So what we can do, she's off of the background already, and we can tell, okay? But we could get closer, and we could lower our aperture a little bit to kind of make that a little bit better, okay? So the wall again gets a little bit less in focus. There's a little bit nicer light on her. We can come even closer and eliminate those distractions. The wall gets even better, okay? Open up a little bit, get closer. Edit also, and the wall distraction completely goes away. It's just a solid color and way nicer and more flattering in general, okay? Just because, yes, this wall is simple-ish, but there's also a bunch of different tones going on. There's texture. Too much is happening, okay? So if we get close enough to eliminate that and open up our aperture to like f2, f2.5, somewhere in there, you're going to create something nice and soft and fuzzy, okay? And that is way more flattering, right? Okay. So, some ideal aperture settings, okay? Low aperture creates a shallow depth of field. For any basic, just nice, standard portrait, it's nice to have a blurry background, a shallow depth of field, okay? Again, if you're creating some sort of environmental portrait where like the landscape or the room is important, then you can change that, okay? But how low of an aperture you can use, like I said, does depend on your lens, okay? So just like think about what you have, what your camera and your lens are capable of, and see what you can create with that, okay? Ideally, if you can, f2 to 2.8 is beautiful, okay? My lens, my 35 that I shot with for so long, just like solely, goes to 1.4. I don't shoot portraits at 1.4, okay, because the depth of field, how much is in focus with that lens is so minuscule that if I missed at all, I would miss focus, okay? So if I accidentally focus on the tip of someone's nose instead of their cheek, I'll get the tip of their nose sharp and everything else is gonna fall out, okay? And their cheek and their eyes are not gonna be sharp, and I don't want that. That doesn't serve anybody, okay? So in the 2 range is better because you're still gonna get a fuzzy background. Some of the hair might fall out of focus, but at least you know that you're gonna get the whole face sharp, okay? Okay. Another reason that this is so great, okay, and why portraiture really does, exposure-wise, need minimal brain power, okay? It's because what does aperture do other than control the depth of field? It controls the light, right? How much light is coming into your lens, okay? So there's another setting that we can adjust to balance out the aperture, okay? Because when we let in all that light with a low aperture, we need to work with it somehow. We need to cancel it out somewhere, okay? And that's a fast shutter speed, right? Fast shutter speeds take away light because there's not a lot of time for the sensor to be exposed. while those wide open apertures, those low apertures, let in lots of light. Okay, so those two things work together to create a nicely exposed image. Okay, it's also great because you need a fast shutter speed in order to freeze people, right? So those two things work together. There's not anything that you're like fighting, okay? You're like, yeah, I need a low aperture and my image is gonna be seriously overexposed if my shutter speed's not fast to go with it, okay? And also, I'm moving and breathing and speaking and existing, which causes camera shake no matter what. So is the person I'm taking pictures of. So I need to be fast in order to not get a blurry picture, okay? So that is like a given, okay? So if you guys are shooting on manual, that's great to know. If you guys are shooting on aperture priority, control the aperture and the camera is automatically gonna give you a fast shutter speed to cancel that out. Okay? I just said that. Cool. Okay, so ISO I'm not gonna spend time on because it's probably gonna be at 100. Okay, your ISO is gonna be low. Because if you're shooting in natural light, 100 or 200 is totally fine. And it's the last thing you need to mess with. Okay, because aperture and shutter speed should work together just fine. Okay? Does that make sense, you guys? Or is that like too much? Okay, cool. I kind of just now realized how long it takes me to explain that, and it's longer than I thought. Okay. All right, so that's the first one. I'm going to talk for just a minute about gear, okay? Because there's a common thought that goes with like photography, which this is true, that photography is one of the most expensive hobbies slash careers slash self-employed thing that you could possibly do, okay? But it's not always, you can work with minimal stuff most of the time, okay? Unless you're gonna go do landscapes, that's the one where the gear bill like stacks up, okay? Otherwise, you are okay with minimal stuff, okay? So, fast lenses are really something that is good to invest in, especially if you wanna pursue portraiture. What I mean by a fast lens is a lens that can go to a low aperture, okay? Because the lower the aperture it can go to, the faster the shutter speed it can have, okay? So, if you guys are going to spend money, that's the first thing that I would spend money on is a really good lens. And if you only have one, that's fine. I literally started my career in shot for a long time with one lens, and it was great. I had to send it into Canon one time because it fell out of focus, and that happens sometimes. But otherwise, I was okay, okay? You don't need all the stuff, okay? When you do buy a lens, or if you're just like thinking about that stuff, if you're using a fixed lens, which a fixed lens is a lens that's just one focal length, that doesn't zoom, okay? If you're using a fixed lens, those are the lengths that I think are the best for portraiture, at least for starting out, okay? A 35, a 50, or an 85, okay? A 50 is like a standard field of view, like how you guys see, okay? It's not wide, it's not telephoto, it just is, okay? Just shows the world the way that you see it. 35 is a little bit wider, not enough to create like any crazy distortion or anything like that, but just a tiny bit, okay? 85 is a little bit closer, okay? So all of them are pretty close to like how a person sees with a little bit of variation, okay? I own a 35 and an 85. With those, there's no really need for me to own a 50 because I don't know when I would ever pick it up. Like either I want to shoot a little bit wide or I want to shoot close. There's not really a reason for me to be in between, okay? But also if you only own a 50, that's great. You'll be fine, okay? Because you can always use your legs and you can get close or get farther away, okay? Whenever I pick up a zoom lens, I get like really confused. I was just telling Laura this, that I forget I can zoom because I've been shooting with fixed lenses for so long that I do just use my legs and I'm like, oh my God, I could have, okay, been turning it the whole time, okay? So if you're getting a fixed lens, those are the ones that I recommend. Okay, if you're going the zoom lens route, 24 to 70 would be all you needed. Okay, because that's almost all those focal length, except not quite to the 85. Okay, built into one. So it just depends on your preference, whether you like zoom lenses personally or whether you like fixed lenses personally. Okay, I like fixed lenses, other people don't. Totally up to you. Okay, and there's not a brand that's better. Whatever you have is great. Nobody cares about what brand you shoot. Okay, anybody that says like, oh, you need to shoot Nikon or whatever is like, they don't know. That's just what they shoot and they think that it's better. Okay. Other than that, everything else kind of, you know, you have a good camera body. Whatever your camera body is great. Doesn't matter. You have a great lens. Everything else kind of becomes an accessory after that. Okay. A flash, if you want to learn that and want to shoot outside of the natural light zone, okay, might be something you want to invest in. A reflector, which I'm sure you guys know what that is. It's literally just a shiny piece of fabric that unfolds like an umbrella or a tent, and it bounces light back at the person. Sometimes that's nice to have, okay? But other than those two things that just like help with some lighting stuff, anything else that you find yourself like using often, if you're, you know, really like the diffuser, you really like a reflector, if you're short and you need a step stool, like it's that stuff. Otherwise, portraiture, you just need your camera on your body, okay? If you're hauling a bunch of gear to a shoot, you're not gonna use it. I promise, okay? Unless you're like bringing a backdrop and doing that whole like studio thing, which that's another class, okay? So if we're just doing natural light, lovely portraits, your camera body and a good lens, okay? Okay, let's talk about light. Important, okay? Would we rather have a beautiful subject in mediocre lighting or a mediocre subject in beautiful lighting? Yes, the second one is correct. It's not like an opinion thing, okay? There's a right answer, okay? This is true no matter what you're shooting, okay? Photography needs light. It has to have good light, okay? Otherwise, the photograph isn't reaching its full potential, okay? We literally need light in order to take pictures. If we didn't have it, there would be no picture, okay? So we need to practice seeing and understanding the way that light works and how it affects our subjects and how it creates shadow and texture and all of the things that it does that either enhances or distorts our subject, okay? We need to be able to see it and use it well, okay? So we can separate lighting into two like buckets, okay? Just soft light and hard light, okay? Soft light is kind of like what we have right now, diffused by something, most of the time clouds, okay? Where there are no really harsh shadows, there's no bright highlights, it's pretty even, just flat light, okay? Hard light comes from a really bright, harsh light source, and it does have contrasty shadows, bright highlights, dark shadows, okay, and creates a lot of drama. Okay, so there's those two buckets. Okay, so soft light creates even lighting all over the subject. And there's a really, really subtle transition from highlight to shadow. There's not crazy harsh contrast. Okay, so it's low contrast light. This comes from a big light source or a really diffused light source that's far away from the subject. Okay, this counts the sky in overcast, okay? That's a big diffused light source, right? Because the sun is spread out and diffused and softened by the clouds. Okay, so example. There's no hot spots or like dark shadows on her face. There's no contrast going on, right? Okay, we see her face, that's it. The light isn't doing anything, okay? It's just displaying the subject and that's it, okay? Same thing here, okay? His hat is helping create some shade, so that softens that light, right? But still, even though there's harsh light behind him, on his face, no crazy shadows, no crazy contrast going on, okay? Hard light has a really, really clear difference between the highlight and the shadow, okay? It's like a hard line. So high contrast, okay? And that comes from a small light source that's close to the subject. And the sun counts in this, even though the sun, I know, is not small. It's in relation to the subject, is how I'm referring to it, okay? So if the sun is just bare, blue sky day, sun is out by itself, I can cover it with my hand. It's small in relation to me, okay? And it creates harsh shadows. We can see them on the sidewalk, okay? We can see them on somebody's face. Often there's like this idea that it's a bit like bluebird day and it's beautiful and the sun, it's so sunny. It's a great time to take pictures, and that's the worst time to take pictures of somebody, okay? The light comes straight down onto them, creates shadows under their eyes, weird shadows under their nose. It's so unflattering. Washes them out. They squint. It's terrible. Okay? So here's an example. Light's coming from everywhere. Really bright highlight, really dark shadows, contrast all over the place. Okay? Same thing here. This is a better use of it. Okay? But still harsh shadow where the light meets her chin, okay, and her jawline, and her arm too, okay? It's like split highlight shadow, okay? There's bright light on her, okay? So not to say that you should never, ever, ever shoot when it's bright outside, but you have to know that it might do this, okay? And you can get creative with it. It could be kind of interesting and cool if you use it well, but know that you are going to have to battle it, okay? And when the light is nice and soft like this, you're going to have a way easier time, okay? Snow also helps too, bounce light back up, okay? It's just like even and lovely all around. Okay, so let's talk about the direction of light, where the heck it's coming from, because that matters too. Okay, there's even lighting, also known as front lighting, which obviously comes from the front of the subject, okay? And I'm talking about the front or direction in relation to the subject, not to you, the photographer, okay? So, even lighting, also known as front lighting, has really nice soft shadows, okay? And it's just an even amount of light on all sides of the subject. It's a form of soft light, okay? So it's coming from the front of the subject. Usually it's just when the sun is like kind of low and in front of the subject so that it just falls around their face. Okay? This is universally flattering. You're not creating any sort of like mood or drama or anything contrasty with even lighting or with front lighting. Okay? It just is flattering and it's nice. Okay? It's a really great just go-to. Okay? Don't do this when it is really bright outside because that's just making your person squint, okay? But if the sun is low enough, where it's just like almost like golden hour, like a really nice low light where there's just light pouring over everything and it's just beautiful, then absolutely you can use front light, okay? Even lighting can also happen in the shade though. If it is a bright day, just shelter somebody, okay? And go like behind a building or something, then the shade is even light everywhere, okay? Example here. This, what's happening right now, if we took a picture outside, that would be even light. Okay? Example here too. Flattering, not shadow going on, not highlighty going on, there's not contrast doing anything weird, okay? Okay, side light comes from the side, okay? Side light is a harsh light, a hard form of light, okay? It creates harsh shadows, and that's light only hitting one side of the subject's face, okay? This is moody and dramatic, example. This is not my picture, but I like it. Okay? There is light only hitting one side of her face. It's coming from this way, and then it spills over to anything, okay, that it can catch. But on her face and most of her body, it's split, right? Side light, you'll also hear split light sometimes, okay? That's dramatic. It's moody, okay? You can easily create this with a window, totally, okay? We could do it in here if there was a bright sun coming in, okay? There's no light over here. There's light over there. Okay. If she was like sitting on that stool and just like smiling like for a headshot, that wouldn't make any sense. There'd be a disconnect, right? So your lighting only matters if you are making the subject's mood and the whole tone of the image match it, okay? Otherwise, I'd be like, this is so dramatic. Why is she so content and happy? That doesn't make sense. I don't like this picture. I'm confused, okay? They need to work together, okay? But also, if you just had really nice, soft, even light, and she was in this crazy, dramatic, angular pose, I'd be like, okay, but why? Right? We need to use light in order to create the mood that we're going for, okay? Another example, you could use it a window, okay, to do that. Okay, butterfly lighting, also known as paramount lighting. Okay, this is a front light. Okay, it's from a light source that is in front of the subject, but also a little bit above. Okay, so it's less so even light. It's a little bit above the subject. Okay, again, it's super flattering. Again, almost always. Okay. All it does is create a small shadow underneath the nose and the chin. So instead of being completely even and spilling evenly all over the face, it creates a little bit of shadow underneath the nose and underneath the chin onto the neck. Okay, so it's a little bit more like headshot-y, a little bit more professional. It's also why it's called paramount lighting. It's kind of like Hollywood looking. But you could easily create that with a window. Okay, if the window is up and the person is a little bit lower than that, that's a light source slightly above the subject. Okay? Example, again, not my photo, this is a dramatic example. Okay, but this is what I'm talking about. The light is like where the projector is. Okay, and there's that shadow underneath. That's also why it's called butterfly lighting. Kind of looks like a half a butterfly. Okay, and then that shadow. Okay, it also is like a natural contour to the cheekbones. Okay, here's a less dramatic example, okay? But same shadow in the cheeks, shadow under here. Obviously, it's completely blacked out under there. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna go through a couple more. Actually, this is my last one, okay? Backlight. So, light source directly behind the subject, okay? This illuminates the hair, creates kind of like a halo effect. You could also use this for silhouetting people. Okay, that's just the light directly or almost directly behind the subject, okay? Often it blows out the background, but again, most of the time that's okay. We're focused on the subject, okay? So we know that the sun is back there. But she's creating her own shade because she's facing away from the light. And the light is just kind of wrapping around and making the background and her hair kind of glowy. Okay? This is also a great alternative to like if they're going to be squinting, they're facing the light, turn them and just backlight them and have them create their own shade. Okay? One more example. Okay, not silhouetted, but still the background is brighter than them, okay, and kind of glowy and warm and golden back here, a little bit of light in her hair, and kind of an ethereal, whimsical sort of effect, okay? Okay, I'm gonna skip forward for a second because there are some that I know are not going to be helpful for you. Let's go to composing. Okay, so putting a portrait actually like into a frame. Okay, so some rules. We want complete body parts. What I mean by that is don't cut people off at their limbs. Don't crop right at joints. It makes the photo feel like it's severed, quite literally, and incomplete. Okay, so when we crop, we want to crop in between. Okay, that doesn't mean you always have to take full body images. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I do mean is that when you are cropping, don't crop right at the elbow, crop in between. Okay, don't crop right at the waist, crop either up a little bit or down a little bit. Same with knees, ankles, neck, all that stuff. Don't crop right here. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's go down to like the shoulders. Okay, so don't crop right at joints. If you can, you know, if like otherwise, if her arm was down, we would be cropping at an elbow. Okay, so just bring it up and kind of complete that. Okay, it's really easy to prompt somebody to play with their hair or their clothing or something like that. Okay, I already kind of said this. Simple backgrounds. Okay, because you're going to get to a location where you're taking somebody's portrait and you have an option or two. You kind of look around and they're like, where should I stand? Find the simplest spot where they can stand and there's not going to be distractions behind them. Okay, if it's a wall that's a solid color, okay, or something like that, or just an area where everything else is going to be far away from them, so it doesn't matter. It's all going to fall out of focus anyway. Okay, seek simplicity, because it's about them, not about the stuff. Okay, kind of goes with simple background, but clean edges. Okay, so what I mean by that is nothing poking into the frame that doesn't belong. No tree branches or like telephone wires just like making an appearance for no reason, right? Making sure that the edges and the background are nice and clean and there's nothing in there that's distracting that doesn't belong. Okay, even this, there's trees everywhere, but they're back far enough, she's stepped off of them enough so that they fall out of focus. Okay, they'd be way more of a distraction if they were all sharp back there. Okay, get close, it's fun. Also, if the eyes aren't sharp, you have to delete it, it's trash. Okay, unless you're like doing something artsy. Okay, the eyes have to be sharp. That's literally how we connect with people, is by looking in their eyes. Okay, I'm not saying you have to put your focus point right on their eyeball, but if you focus on someone's face, okay, their eye is going to come into focus too. Okay, it's the same plane if you focus on cheekbone somewhere. Okay, so don't be struggling trying to like get your focus point right into somebody's eye. Okay, frame the subject with something if you're kind of like lacking creativity or if you're feeling like your environment is really funky and maybe you could use it. Okay, you could use it to frame the subject. Just make sure that it's going to be in like a flattering way that will compliment them or help tell a story or at least like be cohesive colors or something. Okay, but you can use your background and you can use things to put around your subject to make it more interesting. Okay, and what I talked about earlier with perspective, change that up a little bit. Okay, shooting from eye level all the time gets really boring and we start to lose our creativity that way. Okay, and that might not be the best way to get the photo that you're aiming for. Okay, so get high up or get low and shoot in a different perspective to create what you're going for. Okay, I'm laying down here for this picture. Okay, that's the only way to get what I wanted. Okay, if I just took that eye level, she would be like doing that pose and it wouldn't feel the same. Okay, get close. Okay? Don't be afraid to be like, have their person make eye contact with the lens. Get close and personal with them. Okay? That creates intensity, and it like locks the viewer in. Okay? You could also back up and show the environment and show how the person works with the environment. Okay? How that environment helps tell a story. You can back up. Okay? And then you can create sharpness all the way through the image. Okay? Obviously, they're not all going to be like this, but one is kind of cool. Okay? Notice light and mess with it. Play with it. That's the only way that you're going to learn what's flattering and what works and what's not flattering and what doesn't work. Okay, so when you walk into a space, notice where it's coming from, what the light source is, and maybe how it would look if you took a picture in here. Maybe where you would have someone face. Would you have them face the windows? Would you have them face this wall? What would you do? Okay, start just kind of thinking about it. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some posing tips, and then we're going to be all done. Okay? An hour is not very much time. My classes are usually like 4 hours. Okay, you're going to get this question, what should I do with my hands every single time? Because a camera is pointed at someone, and they immediately forget how they exist in their body. Immediately. Okay? They don't know how to smile. They don't know how they stand. They don't know what they do with their hands. So if you just say, like, just be yourself, just stand there, they're like, that's panic in their mind, okay? Because they forgot how they just stand there, okay? And you're not working with models. You're working with people, okay, that are probably uncomfortable with a camera pointed at them, at least for the first couple images, right? So remember that you're going to get that question and tell them what they can do with their hands. Instead of, like, if you just say whatever you want or, like, whatever, they're just going to spiral. It just creates anxiety, right? So if you can take care of them and tell them what to do with their hands, that takes that away, and then they're going to be more comfortable instantly. They're going to be like, oh, you know what you're doing. Thank God, because I don't, right? Okay? So if someone is sitting, that's great. Like, this sort of, like, this, it depends on the person, kind of what they naturally do. And I often don't have a clear idea until I see somebody do what I'm doing back at me. Like I say, tell someone to mirror me, okay? And they'll, like, you know, do one of these, and if that's not really working for, like, their face shape or just whatever, it's just not working for whatever reason, I'll, like, you know, change my hand position a little bit, and they'll mirror me, and one will work, okay? Otherwise, if they're standing, arms crossed is a weird one. I don't like that because it makes the arms, like, more prominent than they need to be, okay? So creating angle with the arms is great. Like, hands in pockets is fine if only one is in the pockets, okay? Same with, like, hips. Hands on hips is fine if one hand is on the hip. This is, I don't know what this is. This is better, okay? So creating, like, angle and kind of an uneven sort of frame instead of trying to make them do the same thing with both hands, okay? Like, this is not good, but this is better, okay? So anywhere that you can find the hand a resting place is good, okay? Don't tell them to just stand there and let them dangle, okay? Even if they are just dangling, tell them that they need to, like, have it in a belt loop or at least, like, rest it on their leg. It needs to have a home somewhere, okay? Same with, this is more of a masculine pose, okay? What do I do with my hands? But this is a great one for men when they say, what do I do with my hands? Just put them together. Just sit there, put them together, okay? Because a man doing something, like, more feminine like this doesn't quite connect, okay? This is a little bit more of a masculine one. Also, I know you guys, I don't know if you noticed or not, all my photos are of women because I'm professionally, I'm a, like, intimate and boudoir photographer, so I don't ever work with men or photograph men, so there's minimal examples of men in here. I even have minimal examples of what I can show you in general that's not that's a clothed person, okay? So I'm not like super biased, it's just not my profession. Okay. We can use posing to create like a mood, and we just do that by angles, okay? Anything that can create an angle, use it, okay? So what's happening here, all of this, she's not just doing this by herself. All of that's directed and controlled, right? Okay, so her putting her weight on one leg, that's a great prompt. Like any woman, if you say pop a hip, a woman knows what that means, okay? But if you say put your weight on one leg, they're gonna stand with one leg and the other one's just gonna kind of hang out, okay? That immediately creates angle, okay? So that's what she's doing. One leg is stepped out farther than the other. That creates angle, okay? One hand being up, that creates angle. The other one's kind of just hanging out, and that's totally fine, okay? Also changing that perspective to kind of shoot up at her makes her look down at me, which creates like attitude when you look down at somebody. Okay, but saying to someone to put their weight on one leg is an awesome prompt. I'd never, ever, ever have somebody just stand at me. Always, it immediately creates a curve, okay? Use your environment if you have one that needs using, okay? So, like this, absolutely, okay? Use that, that's cool, it's urban, okay? But if I just told her sit, like she wouldn't just immediately do that, okay? I have to control everything. So she sits down and then I can make adjustments. I can say, okay, we want to create angle and we want to create different levels, right? So one leg is higher up than the other one, okay? One arm is up, one arm is down, okay? She's sitting on like the very, very, very edge of that step in order to successfully do that, okay? A lot of poses are not super comfortable to sit in, but it's only for a second, okay? Then they can relax, okay? Also, when people sit, they naturally like slouch forward and their shoulders roll forward and their back curves, and that's not flattering, right? Most of us don't have perfect posture all the time. That's like very rare, okay? We all want to, but when we see like a candid photo of ourselves, we learn that we don't, okay? So when someone sits, they're automatically gonna do that, so I always tell somebody to sit up super tall, like really tall in their spine, okay? Sometimes it feels like they're arching their back to them, but it doesn't look like they are. It just looks like they have good posture, like they're sitting up straight. Okay? And she had the option, you know, where do I look? Do I look at you? I don't want every single photo of somebody looking at me, okay? So she's just looking, I just say, go over here. I like point. Okay? So wherever you can create different levels and different angles is good, okay? Someone should never just be sitting straight onto you or standing straight onto you, okay? You can get really creative with creating different shapes, okay? Making people really tall, making curve wherever you can, okay? You can get really, really creative with people that are comfortable doing that, okay? And you can just kind of like watch what happens. And some of it is not gonna make sense or work, okay? But if you tell someone to like, you know, put their hands up above their head and just see what happens, it might work out, okay? This is another rule. If it bends, bend it. That's kind of like create angle wherever you can, okay? That's why no one's ever standing straight on. No one's ever has their arms like this. Like what picture is that? We don't want that of ourselves. Nobody wants that of themselves, okay? So this is obviously a dramatic like fine art example, okay? But if there is something to bend to create an angle, use it, okay? Even somebody putting one hand in a pocket or a belt loop or one hand on a hip, that's creating an angle. That's an angle right there, okay? Even someone turning to look this way instead of right at you, that's an angle. Okay. Eye contact is awesome. Okay, you can say, look right at me. Okay. This is another, like, if it bends, bend it. Okay. I don't want her just leaning against the wall, like, flat. Okay. So we're creating angle with this kind of, like, gesture that she has going on, where both her hands are in her pockets. That's fine to me for this one. Okay. Especially because they're not, like, out like this. She's leading, so one is kind of tucked in. Okay. We're creating angle by one foot crossing over the other. Okay, and that she's looking this way. The whole gesture is kind of like pointing this way, right? And we're just creating angles wherever we can. Okay. If somebody naturally puts their hand in their pocket and it's out like this, tell them to like tuck their elbow in. Okay. Like here. I don't remember, but if she did put her hand in her pocket and it automatically flared out, I would have said, like, control that shoulder, bring your elbow back in. Okay? This is my last tip for you, is to shoot in between poses. Okay? So in between when you're directing, like, yes, I told him to sit this certain way and create this certain angle. I told him to do all of that and just look at me. Right? Okay, but I never put my camera down and I don't know what happened, but like that's a great picture too. Right? Okay. Same thing, like trying to do something artsy, trying to control everything, okay, and then I like don't put my camera down, we're done with the pose. It's out of focus, but that's a great picture too. Okay? So the only way to get those candid moments though is to actually be shooting during them when they're happening. Instead of like the pose is done, camera's down. Okay, we can say, okay, you can relax and maybe like keep taking some more and see what happens. Okay? So that's one way making people feel comfortable. I just have a couple tips about making people feel comfortable. Hang on, don't worry about this one. Okay? This is a during the shoot making people feel comfortable. Okay? Be confident with your camera in your hand, because if you're unsure, they're unsure. Okay? Even if you have to fake it. Fake it. It's fine. Okay? And have fun with the person. Don't act like they're a subject that you're trying to photograph and that's it. Have fun and spend time with them. Compliment them. Ask them about their day. Talk to them. If it's a couple, ask them about their story. Okay? Be a person and interact with them. Okay? That's going to make them feel like they're not a subject. It's going to make them feel like a person. Okay? And if you're talking, that's also going to help you not have any sort of awkward silence, right? Because that immediately, an awkward silence, someone's going to recoil into themselves and be like, oh God, I forgot I was having my portraits taken. Okay, but if you're constantly interacting, they're going to forget about that. Okay? So treat the people like the people, not subjects. So when you're learning portraiture and you're practicing poses and you're practicing lighting and you're just trying to like figure out what works, use somebody that you know and that knows that you're learning, so that you don't just like reach out to a random person and say like, hey, can I take your senior portraits or can I take your headshots? They're going to automatically assume that you know how to do that. So if you're just learning and say to a friend or a sibling or a partner or a kid, like, hey, I just want to play and learn and try some things, that's going to make it way easier on you, less pressure on you, and it's somebody that you already know and are comfortable with. Okay? And then they're not expecting great photos from you. They know that you're just trying to figure stuff out. Okay? Any questions, you guys? Yes?
About 10 or 20 pictures back where you were talking about taking pictures from a distance.
Yeah.
And well, that one picture, you had that gal, but her hand looked huge. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes along with taking pictures of fish out on the river.
Sure. It's bigger if it's closer. Yeah.
But in that picture you had, her hand looked really huge, mm-hmm. out of proportion, mm-hmm. kind of flattering. Mm-hmm. This. What would you do to avoid like her hand looking?
Take it away.
Or wouldn't it help to step back a ways?
Maybe, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or just take it away.
Take it away.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Well, maybe on that case, if you have her hands out, it's going to look big. If you're back, but if she puts her hand in close, like you said, the fish,
Yeah, her hand
if
is.
it's back closer to you, it's going to have a better perspective than if she's got it out here and you're way back there zooming in.
Yeah, that would make sense. What else?
Well, these, it jumped on me. I took a class on UOE9, the Charlie Beat photos.
Okay.
Have you been in Charlie Beats?
Yeah.
All those portraits?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I took a class from him back in the late 70s.
Okay.
And several of these things are what we learned. It was really very interesting. It was really an excellent class to take from him. There was one of those guys that we took out one Sunday morning early because we wanted morning light. We wandered around downtown taking pictures of him in the alleys and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And learned a lot of that. But, he had 10 people taking his picture, which, but
Yeah.
he was able, Lee was able to say, all right, and he was great. Well, then the other part is he brought a bottle of wine along, and it was Sunday morning, gave it to the guy. And he wanted to share it, and everybody said, oh, come on.
It's 9 in the morning.
But
yeah.
that, when I looked at those, I thought, yeah, that's some of the stuff, is to relate to the person and learn, to make them comfortable, and then you can get different portraits, of what their face is doing, whether they're just internally thinking or if you're engaging them, then their face is different when they're looking out at you, type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have a question?
not really.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question? Yeah.
So you were talking about like the awkward smile, other than just telling them like, just laugh.
Smile. Yeah.
Do you have like another?
I tell people to give me a fake one, a fake laugh, because it's a stupid thing to do, and they end up just really laughing. Or honestly, like the first couple shots, don't tell them to do anything, just let them kind of exist for a second. And then if you tell them to get like a soft smile is not teeth. I almost never ask somebody to like actually cheese at me. I think that's horrible. And nobody ever does that. Even if I smiled at somebody that I knew right now, I wouldn't like show my teeth at them, right? So I tell somebody to give me like a soft smile, and most of the time that just like curls the mouth a little bit to like something soft and flattering. And most of the time people think they're awkward with their face, but they're really not. They're just like insecure about it. So if you tell somebody to soft smile, if you get them comfortable enough, they're just gonna kind of have a nice expression anyway and not be uncomfortable. If anybody's seen America's Top Model, they know smize, to smile with your eyes, and I relate to people on that level, and if they haven't, it dates me, I guess. And also, like, it's something to talk about. Smile with your eyes and not the rest of your face, and then they start to think about it, and then they laugh, because that's hard to do. And also, I just tell them to, like, give me their best fake laugh, and they always give me a real one, because that's silly, and it's embarrassing. Okay, so those are like my 3. And after that, they're super comfortable with me anyway, so once they look at me, they're gonna automatically give me a nice one.
What about people who close their eyes or have trouble kind of
Like keeping their eyes open. If it's really bright, sometimes people are really sensitive to that. Try to get them like in the shade or backlit or something so that that's not a factor, because people are always gonna be squinting if it's bright where they're looking, and that's not flattering for so many reasons, right? So to face them away from any sort of bright light, and never ever do the like close your eyes until I say 3 and open them, that's horrible. Like, just fix the lighting. Don't force them to look into the sun. And then also just kind of continuing to remind them, like, to relax their face and to look at you, okay? Because sometimes people do, like, when they smile, their eyes close a little bit. So that's another thing with the soft smile. It's not like a big one, it's just a little one. So then their eyes just are open and not squinting like a ton. Does that help?
And then you mentioned occasionally you use like a reflector.
Yeah.
And so when would you recommend?
I would use that when, like, if someone is backlit and you want a little bit more light on your face, you can bounce the light back at them. And same thing with like side lighting or anything like that. Anytime the light isn't quite doing what you want it to, sometimes you can bounce it back onto the person. Okay? Also, if you're taking like senior photos or photos of kids or anything like that where there's like a parent or someone kind of hovering, watching you, it's a great job for them to have. Even if it's not 100% necessary, they love it. Okay? You say, here, bounce the light, and then they do it, and then they're busy, and they're not looking over my shoulder. And maybe it is also helpful, but also if it's not, that's not a big deal. It's a great job. Okay? But anytime you need more light and you don't have a flash or anything like that, that's when you would use it to bounce them back.
So sometimes people are taking like pictures of infants and that. Do you have any suggestions about that when a child is not really responsive?
When it's like literally a little bundle. Yeah, I think that honestly, like, the less manipulating the better, because a lot of those photos that you see of like the baby like this or like any of those are composites, and that's not real. That's not, the baby's not actually doing that. So the less manipulation, the better. Just get nice even lighting. If you honestly put them like with a big fluffy blanket next to a big window, you're gonna be great. And then just, I don't know how creative you can get with something like that, but move them however you or the parent wants. And as long as you have like really nice flattering light, they're gonna be adorable, right? If you have contrasty, crazy brightness happening, then that doesn't make sense for newborn photos. That's not flattering. But yeah, if you have really nice, flat, even light, then that's great. Yes?
So when you tell people to look at you, now I assume that's a digital camera, so you're holding it down below?
No. Me is camera.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you've got the camera up here, so they're looking in.
Yeah, because I have a viewfinder that I'm looking through. So yeah, my eyes is the lens. Yep,
I was wondering whether you're having them look directly into the lens or looking at you, which makes a difference.
That's the same.
And again, I'm old enough that I had SLRs where that's all you had.
Yeah.
Was looking through the viewfinder.
Yeah, no, it's the
And
same.
so you tell people, look into the lens.
Yeah.
Is what you really want.
Yes. Yeah, if I want someone like making eye contact with even the viewer, like the camera itself, that's me, because it's up here. I never, even if you have whatever, none of this window of the person, that's, no. Up. Okay. Anything else, you guys? Okay, well, take the packet if you didn't already, make notes in it, scribble, okay, practice. Also take a business card so you guys can reach out to us if you have any questions. Okay? Cool, thank you guys. Have a good night.